Welcome to this presentation in which we will explore what mastery is, looking specifically at the primary setting. So mastery is not something new. It's been around and spoken about at a very high level for decades and decades. And it is a responsive model of teaching. There are many complete models of schooling, and mastery is one of those. The mastery model has been described as one-to-one tuition, but with an entire class. We know that within that mastery model, the teacher is continually questioning to find out what the children have understood or not understood, and then importantly, doing something about it, teaching differently or presenting materials in a new and different way. Fundamentally, the teacher truly believes that every child can learn everything. Questioning does not seek to find out who the clever children are or who is able to do and learn maths. Every child, we believe, can learn well, and if they are not learning well, the breakdown is in the teacher instruction. So, thinking I need to do something differently to ensure that the children are able to grasp the concepts that I'm teaching them. So, this responsive model of teaching, within this responsive model of teaching, the teacher will be checking for understanding and responding all the time, just as a one-to-one tutor would do. The emphasis is on the teacher's responsibility, so their understanding of the content, having really secure and deep, flexible subject knowledge. Teachers understanding that prerequisite knowledge that the children absolutely need before they move on to a new concept. The pedagogical practices the teacher implores to keep the children working together on the right maths, using the right representations, structures, and vocabularies at the right time. Although the emphasis is rightly on the teacher, children also have that responsibility to work hard to develop mathematical resilience and must have the will, or there will be that breakdown. Mastery learning cannot occur even in the most effective teachers' classrooms. That learning will not occur unless children are invested as well, that the children exert that appropriate effort for this. We know that learning maths is complex, and this is something that the children absolutely need to be made aware of. If we just have a brief look at the national curriculum requirement for our children in the subject of mathematics, we can see that the sections highlighted really do point to that mastery model of schooling that we've adopted in our primary schools. That the majority of pupils will move through the programs of study at broadly the same pace. However, we're thinking about the time that the children need to fully grasp those concepts within that program of study, and making sure that the children are fully secure before they are ready to move on to that next stage. Children who grasp concepts rapidly should be challenged through being offered rich and sophisticated problems before any acceleration through new content. And those who are not sufficiently fluent with earlier material should consolidate their understanding, including through additional practice before moving on. So I'm going to unpick that in a minute using a mastery model to have a little look at what that looks like in a classroom every day. What does that look like over a year? What does that look like over time? How do we ensure that this is happening for all of our children, when we know that when children come into our classrooms, there is already, even when you have more than one child, we know there's already a range of needs there. There's already a range of experiences. So it's tricky, isn't it, to know what to do at the right time for the children. Then we've got mastery according to the NCETM. So teachers holding and sharing the belief that pupils will achieve. Task differentiation is by depth, not acceleration. Lessons foster deep conceptual understanding. Practice of procedure is intelligent and builds fluency. And teacher questioning informs prompt interventions. Again, we will look at this in more detail. And then we've got different aspects to mastery. So we want to be really clear on what mastery is in these different aspects. So a mastery approach is that set of principles and beliefs I've alluded to already. A mastery curriculum, when we talk about the maths curriculum, because mastery is not just for maths, but we're looking at mastery through primary maths today. A mastery curriculum is one set of mathematical concepts and big ideas for all children, because all children can and will learn well given the right time and conditions. Teaching for mastery then is a set of pedagogic practices that keep the class working together, and achieving mastery can be of particular topics and areas of mathematics. And some children will master a topic in one area, quicker than they might in another area, but should be given sufficient time to grasp all the concepts that they need to secure that firm foundation in primary maths so that they are ready then for Key Stage 3. So here is Mark McCourt's model of the mastery learning cycle, and it appears in Mark McCourt's book, Teaching for Mastery. And it offers us a kind of a flow chart to show what we mean by mastery as that responsive teaching model. And if we look at this, we can imagine any objective we're teaching, any new unit we're teaching in maths, no matter which scheme you use or your maths curriculum in your schools, and unpick what that looks like to ensure that we're truly providing that mastery curriculum that our children are entitled to. And if we go back and think about those national curriculum aims for all children to have that access to those mathematical concepts and not to move on until they're ready to deepen their understanding within a given concept as well. So this is the entire mastery learning cycle model. I'm just going to break it down a little bit further. So we can see here that we start with a new unit. So if we're starting with a new unit of work, you may be teaching and the children are learning. Before we can start that new unit, we need to test that prerequisite knowledge through possibly low stakes quizzing, or we might have questions on a previous end of unit assessment, but we're trying to find out, we're assessing, we're asking questions, we're finding out if the children are ready to access the new unit. Maths is a hierarchical curriculum, and it's dependent on those firm foundations. If the children haven't secured objectives which are dependent for the new knowledge to be understood, then there are going to be those gaps that we're trying to avoid. So we want to be really, really sure that the children are ready to move on to that new unit. So we test the prerequisites. And once we have done that, we can see that if everybody's above 80%, so within those prerequisites, we're ready to move on to that new unit. If we've got individuals who are above 80%, we can move them on to prerequisite topics, enrichment and enhancement. This means that children who are ready for the new unit, they have that prerequisite knowledge, we give them enrichment and enhancement activities and tasks to really deepen their understanding about something they are already securing. So concepts that they've already grasped and they're already securing. If you've got children who are not ready, they're not secure on that prerequisite knowledge, we do some corrective teaching for those children to make sure that they are at where they need to be and they show readiness to access and move on. Once they show that readiness and move on, this is fluid. Those children may then move on to the enrichment activities and enhancement activities until the whole class are ready to move on. And then we move on to, so once everybody's ready, we will proceed with that new unit. You can begin by teaching this new unit using the mastery pedagogy, being as responsive as we can and ensuring in the moment corrective teaching as we move through the unit. We're continually asking ourselves if anyone needs more support, practice or guidance. We're going back to our corrective teaching. We're checking for understanding and we're responding at all points in that unit. Once everyone is ready and a unit is complete, we have some kind then of summative assessment, some kind of summative test. And again, we're checking if everyone is above that 80%. This is our benchmark, which Benjamin Bloom originally codified when he researched and investigated that mastery approach. 80% allows us to take into account that learning is complex, and so are our classes. And there may be reasons beyond our control that not 100% of our class are on track at a given point. So once we have completed a summative assessment, we go back through our corrective teaching and enrichment cycle. And then we should be ready, once everybody's above that 80%, to move on, that we've ended that unit and we've planned that next unit of work. Obviously coming back and revisiting those concepts throughout the year to ensure that they're fully understood, because we know that children forget as soon as they've learnt, and so we need to make sure that we're refreshing and building that retrieval strength as we go through. And again, this is the full cycle, and we can see that together. Now we have to be able to create the correct conditions or the right conditions for mastery. So we're thinking about the difference between ability and attainment. So often we see pupils labelled as low ability, which means low attaining. However, that's not often the case. So often we can have high ability children who are often low prior ability. So we can have high attaining children who are often low prior ability. So ability refers to how long it takes to learn something. Attainment is what you have attained after learning. So ability can change, and it's very flexible. It could be that we are high ability in one area or one aspect of even within maths. So it could be, we're thinking about children in our classrooms, it could be that a child grasps or has the ability to grasp aspects of money or time or fractions really rapidly. They might have a higher ability to grasp those ideas in those areas of learning, but they might have low ability in a different learning episode, such as decimal place value or negative numbers or whatever it might be. However, that child is able to attain highly in both areas regardless. If we want children to work at pace and do the right maths, we need to work with homogeneous groups. So it may not be possible in a primary classroom where children have not experienced a mastery model in earlier year groups. However, we can, by using checks for understanding, by developing our own subject knowledge and giving the children the right amount of time, create these groups within our classrooms to allow for that adaptive, responsive maths teaching, which will be more effective for each individual. So if we look here at a typical class, and we're looking at those green children, they fully grasped all the previous year group's ideas and concepts. They've had anything they were not sure about responded to. However, those orange children, it could be that they haven't fully grasped ideas. They might have ideas which are not connected. And those red children, they haven't grasped the ideas as we would have hoped they would. Then there needs to be a lot of corrective teaching for those children to catch up. So it could be within any given concept that in year one, there could be a child who has one idea that's not fully grasped. They may have another idea that has not been responded to, and they might have a third idea that's not connected by the time that they leave year one. And as they pass through school, we find the same child. There are many ideas that are not fully grasped. There are many ideas that are not responded to. And then are many ideas that are not connected. And then once a child reaches that stage at the age of 10, 11, 12, they end up being in this kind of fight or flight response to maths. If children are socially threatened or adults are socially threatened, human beings are socially threatened, we respond in the same way as when we feel we're in physical danger. So children will switch off, they won't engage with maths at all, and they will break down, and then that very real maths anxiety will set in. So it's really important that when we meet our classes, and this is a typical classes scenario in front of us, how can we make this work every day in every lesson that we teach? How can we track progress, and how would you make use of interventions for this group of children? So when we meet this class, which we always do, how can we make sure that these children are able to get proper enrichment and challenge? How can we support these children to really get it and fully grasp an idea? And we know that some of these children need a lot of support because they're not grasping it all, because their ideas previously have become disconnected or not responded to. So how can you make it work? There are different things that we can consider, and there's different things happening in school. So we could be making use of pre and post teaching, same day interventions, embedding the key concepts that children need to access the new learning before we start through that pre requisite checks and then corrective teaching, providing scaffolds which are removed over time. So it could be scaffolds which the children need for a particular lesson, which may not be related to the main concept that you're teaching. It could be to something else, prior learning, which they're not fully secure and that you still need to correct through that corrective or precision teaching. We know time is really, really important. Children forget, as I said, as soon as we teach them. So we have to make sure that we're planning for that as well. We know that we need the capacity to be able to do these things, organising learning so that it makes sense, and putting children into groups based on what we see in our classroom, and giving those children, those green children, that enrichment opportunities. Those yellow and those red children will need the opportunity to practice more, to be taught in a different way. We're responding to what we've seen. It's not that they haven't been taught, it's just that they haven't learned in the way that we've wanted them to. If we then have a look at one concept of adding fractions, you can see all of these dependents, all this prerequisite knowledge a child will need to be able to access this learning. So you're looking at the hierarchical structure when we're sequencing courses or ideas. So that's why testing that prerequisite knowledge through questioning or quizzing and then teaching it if necessary. So it's never wise for us to assume that children know these ideas and concepts because they were taught it last year or last week or last month. It's really important that within that mastery model of schooling, we are continuously checking for understanding, responding, reteaching where necessary, and really not starting something new until each child is absolutely ready. Because as we said, learning maths is not always the easiest. Because the ideas in maths link up into such a richly interconnected and hierarchical way. Learning maths will be hard for children if they do not have the knowledge of the facts and the procedures to draw upon. We know new learning builds on that existing knowledge. If we accept that learning involves a progressive change in what a student knows or can do without a solid and reliable knowledge base, students will struggle to make sense of new learning. It's especially true in maths, where there is so much content and so much of it relies on what has come before. So thank you for listening. This was just a short introduction to mastery teaching, and there will be subsequent videos where we will look in more detail at explanations, examples, and tasks, which will help you to teach maths in the primary classroom more comprehensively, and help us to ensure the highest quality mathematics education for all of our children. So thank you again for listening today.